which means the qadar, sometimes it is connected with the word that you utter, right? It's connected with a word that you utter. There was an amazing story about a judge where a judge was sitting, he was a guest at someone's house, and he's sitting there. All of a sudden, he just felt like so uptight and claustrophobic. Right? This has happened like in the last century, one of the stories of the last century. So he got all claustrophobic. He comes out. He says to the host, he said, "Excuse me, I just need to take a walk a little bit." Now, this story happened in a place where there was almost like, it was not a big city. So he walks out. He's taking a walk. He's just getting some fresh air. All of a sudden, he hears this crying. There's this woman crying, right? And he goes, turns around, he says, "What's wrong?" She said, "My husband, he's taking my kids. We're divorced. He took my kids. All I want to do is see my kids." And he said that, "Well, what did you do about it?" He said, "Well, I filed with the court, but the court is taking forever, and I need to see my kids." You can imagine what kind of situation the mother's in. So he thought to himself, "Subhanallah al-Azim, Allah brought the judge right to you while she's crying." SubhanAllah, the heart of a mu'min, when it's in distress and it turns to Allah, it's amazing what could happen. He said to her, "Allah has brought you the judge right to you." He said, "What's your case?" "Tomorrow morning I file it." And they did, right? And he did. SubhanAllah al-Azim, that the heart of a mu'min, at some point, if you have sincerity in what you're saying, and if you don't have sincerity, but you're repeating it, the repetition of it must indicate sincerity. If you don't know, am I sincere or not? Let's wait. Let's wait a period of time. So that's why if you continue to insist upon something, it is divine justice to make it happen for you. So shaitan promises you faqr. So don't speak this language that is against Tawheed. Why is it against Tawheed? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he just said he's Ghaniyul Hamid. He is full of wealth. There's a hadith. Sheikh al-Deeb says in one of his lectures, okay, he talks about this hadith. He says, "Mundu an khalaqa as-samawati wal ard, kam anfaq?" How much did Allah has given? Mundu an khalaqa as-samawati wal ard. How much has Allah fed people? How many jinn, how many ins, how many birds, how many cats have eaten and filled their stomach from the time that Allah created the earth? So why would you worry about poverty? I was sitting at the hospital the other day. No, just today. I was just sitting at one of the most beautiful hospitals, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Foundation, Cancer Research Center. Is that where you want to work when you grow up? Cancer? What do you want to work in?
Maybe like eye doctor.
Eye doctor.
Surgery.
Okay. So Harris Amin is your guy then. You go take a tutorship under him. Tutelage under Harris Amin. Harris Amin does eye surgeries. So I'm sitting here and it's raining. And now the window, this is a gorgeous hospital. The window is really tall. You know, when you go to these hospitals and they're like almost like exquisite hotels, they make these hospitals so nice now, right? So I'm looking and water is streaming down, rain is streaming down. Now, you know that it's one of the signs of Allah Ta'ala that he states that he knows has knowledge of every leaf when it falls from the ground. And every drop when it falls from the earth. Sayyidina Ali says Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has taken an account of every single drop that falls from the sky to the earth, except one time, which is the flood of Nuh. There was no counting. And Allah knows the numbers, but he did not assign angels to count them. And there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ has said that in the wilderness, there are angels counting the leaves on the trees and documenting their status. That means when did it come out? When did it fall? Now, anytime you're counting, there's always things like when does something become a leaf? And when is it considered dead? If half of it's brown, all of it's brown, like they must have that fiqh. There must be a fiqh. So I thought to myself, could you imagine having to document just one pane, one window, and this was a huge window, for a year? How many drops of water are going to come down? Now, there's so many factors. A drop of water falls. That drop, when it falls, you notice though, it trails other drops. Do those count as drops? What happens when that drop, a next drop comes and it meets another drop and it unifies? So it was a drop for one, and then there were two different drops and they became one. It's mind-boggling, just one pane of glass for a year, like how much accounting there would be. Okay. And then are you going to count it? Like, do we consider evaporation? Like where does this end? Or does it become fall into a pool of water at the bottom? I thought to myself, when Allah Ta'ala says that he counts this, I'm thinking to myself, are you seriously angels counting every leaf and every drop? Well, what does that tell you? What that tells you is that Allah's knowledge and ability is really infinite. Because you literally our minds cannot fathom how many drops of rain will fall on a piece of glass for 1 year, let alone for the history of mankind. So that just tells you that Allah Ta'ala is counting the numbers. Anything that comes to your mind is totally minuscule, is not even going to be one grain of sand in comparison to all the grains of sand in the world. So whatever you need of amount of wealth, it is readily available. People worried about bills and gas prices shouldn't be. The wealth is ready available. You first have to open your heart to that it is. And it's out there. You secondly have to open to your heart that Allah is generous. Why do you think He would withhold from you? What would be gained from withholding from you? Like, of all the humans and birds and dogs and cats and whales and sea creatures that have eaten in the past, and all the wealthy that have accumulated wealth in the past, what is the value of withholding a little drop from you? It's not. It's that people don't have the mentality. So the question is now, well, how do I acquire this? Right? How do I acquire it? That takes a little bit of creativity and effort. But you don't say you can't. Because that mentality of saying you can't, I'm telling you, the only really lesson that you needed to learn in all of school is that little train that says, I think I can. Right? That one lesson, that book, that's pretty much everything else is a footnote to it's a secular education. Right? That's the most important thing, because that's what's going to stave off grief, depression. It's going to stave off crime. Why do you need to break the law to earn your money? Right? Because you believe that you can't do it lawfully. Right? That you can't be happy doing it lawfully. It's all based on a negative belief. Okay. So that's what negative belief comes from Iblis, because it leads to so many crimes. Negative belief leads to crimes. Positive belief leads to productivity in the world, okay, and happiness. وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. See, immediately after He's put the seed of poverty in your mind, He then commands you to do some sin. So the seed of lack in the mind of a person and the seed of impossibility, this is impossible, this cannot be done, is the precursor before He tells you go commit fahsha. Like, let's take an example. Man exists and he believes he will never marry the woman that a woman that is beautiful. So what does he do? He goes and does sins because he believes that's out of reach. Right? No matter what a situation is, why would you believe it's out of reach? That belief is your choice. Okay? That's your choice. Nothing is out of impossible if you zoom out of all of human history and see how much Allah has created and how many people have bizarre stories, amazing stories. Like in scholarship, some people say, I'll never be a scholar. Wait a second. Are you over 55? No, I'm not I'm 45, but I'm really busy. Yeah, but shit. I read that Sheikh Zakaria al-Ansari, the great Shafi'i scholar, started his journey illiterate at the age of 55. I also read another story about a 70-year-old man, 70 years old. How much his life is gone? His whole life is gone. That's what you would imagine, right? If you hit 70 years old, you're pretty much saying, I'll packing everything up and ready to die. This 70-year-old man got insulted by a youth in Azhar when he spilled oil on him when he was changing the lamps back in the old days. Okay. The youth said, how old and still can't even fix the lamps right? Right. He basically insulted him. That man went that day. He got really depressed at that statement. And that depression lasted with him for a while. It was like upsetness mixed with sadness. What did I do with my life? Blah, blah, blah. I got these youth making fun of me. Allah must have sent him an angel to inspire him and whispered him, go register. He gets the courage. He shows up to the rector of Al-Azhar, the principal, and he registers. He signs up. Look at him. Like, how many years of service did you do? Just register for free, study for free. We'll cover everything. Right? He studies at Azhar for 10 years. Firstly, you didn't even imagine if he's going to live 1 or 2 more years. But something inside him said, well, die doing this. Die upon this. He studied for 10 years. He just kept living, right? In 10 years, he memorized the entire Quran. Not easy for a 70-year-old. He finished Alfiyat ibn Malik. He finished the fiqh that whatever his madhab was in. And he took the other basic books on usul and hadith and suluk and aqidah. But his specialty was Arabic. At the age of 80, he became a sheikh at Azhar. How amazing is this? At the age of 80, think about it. If you study 10 years and you're hanging out every single day for 10 years, you're going to be a sheikh, right? You're taking the classes. It's not just sitting around. He became a sheikh, okay? And his book was taught in Azhar until recently. He was a sheikh of Azhar for 10 years. Tell anybody you're going to be a sheikh of Azhar for 10 years. It's a pretty good deal, right? You'll take it. SubhanAllah.
Also, it's not that far off. 2 of our teachers, both of them, past middle age, in high school, they memorized the Quran.